Well, hello everyone. This is Seen How Many, the podcast where the English language podcast of Near-Balkan, where Morgan, who's now in South Africa for real, and me, Matthias, are talking about independent short film making and some direct experiences we've had in the past 2 years in a European Union funded, youth exchange / artistic residency, and how we together were involved in at least four different independent short film, low budget, no budget productions, and how we found a way through and how our creative methods and approaches are and that sort. And meanwhile, to give a context to all of this, we also talk about how these programs were and how their environments allowed us and the community who we've been together with to create with more liberty, and thus allowing us to rethink the way our stories told through the medium of film should be told, and how that kind of thing.
Yes, and exploring our
this.
media. Yes, definitely. As you said, we'll explore our experiences in Manet, which you introduced me to the independent filmmaking scene, and how to write for short films as well.
Yeah, Manet, that's the charming town in southern France, in the region of Cantal, where we got our experiences. It's all thanks to Laurent, who organized these projects and who's been organizing them for 26 years now. It's a long time. He has this vision of creating a social experiment.
Social experiment, maybe a kind of utopian dream for artistic or like-minded people.
Yeah, in some way it's a communal socialist experiment, and not communist in any way. So socialist in the sense that almost all the aspects of money that come into the picture are removed from this. So for the participants, it's all covered. You go there and you just relax there. You don't have to worry about your accommodation, the food. You don't have to worry about traveling there. You don't have to worry about the programs there, the community there. And the only thing you have to do is, for the time being, which is usually 3 weeks, and this length is important for the projects and that we're going to talk about. The time being, you only focus on the community and the workshops, the projects, the art itself. And so that's his vision, that these experiences are actually the only time when people have the time to spend it on the art and not worrying about financials and
the rest of life.
Materialistic things.
Yeah. Because, generally, as we've heard from some participants of the project, they felt like it was a unique bubble of time that helped them be more enthusiastic about art and put all their effort into that avenue for a short time.
Yeah. And let's just, I have a segment here to talk about what Near-Balkan is. So our company, that Morgan is the correspondent, the international correspondent of, and that I'm one of the co-founders of. It's, let's call it a film production company, a to be, and already happening, just not still taking shape. We've been working for 2 years now on the development of a platform, an online movie short film crowdfunding platform that wants to kind of reimagine the way that short film funding and short film creation looks like currently for the past 20 years in Eastern Europe and how the lack of competition and the lack of contrast and comparison between amongst the projects that we filmmakers, starting out filmmakers and already established filmmakers create. So all the screenplays, all the scripts, all the film ideas that we have, we usually fear of sharing these to each other and showing off. That's not a thing anymore.
Well, wouldn't you say that you're hoping to make more opportunity in the indie movie world in Eastern Europe and Western Europe?
Well, opportunity in a way that so by showing off ideas and by creating a contrast, some spectacle on ideas and how good these ideas are and how they can compete and how people can always find or make something better out of what they had previously but was beaten by some other competitor. So by these urge, we try to attract people to the same community, to the same platform, and thus creating a hub of filmmakers now. So everyone who's in the Gesamtkunstwerk of filmmaking, so every type of fine and applied artist, they should, if we succeed, have a platform where they can find each other, and when they have film projects, independent short film projects that they need a crew for, they need cast for, they already should find some of them on the platform and could invite them to the projects that they are in the making of. And furthermore, as it's a crowdfunding platform, we have a special way that we imagined for the crowdfunding that should be happening there, as filmmaking itself is a very expensive sport. We have this logic at the let's say the first years that every 2 months we host a competition, and so it's not only crowdfunding for films on their own like in normal crowdfunding sites, because otherwise the competition aspect would be erased. So films that or film ideas, drafts, trailers, teasers, whatever, proofs of concept that are uploaded, these are competing in that 2-month long race for one prize. So people that are buying tickets actually to the premiere screenings of these to-be-made movies, they are buying these tickets, pre-ordering for that one movie that actually wins the competition. So there is this urge again introduced that you are competing for your funding, and you are not only competing for the audience to buy to yours, they are buying tickets, pre-ordering tickets for the competition itself, to be fans of a team or another, and to eventually, even if your film didn't win, to have the chance and go with it, and to be able to go to a premiere screening of a well-established, well-prepared movie of that 2 months and the year after in the making. Yeah, that's it.
Well, through these competitions, the candidates that don't make it into production in one competition doesn't qualify them or doesn't disqualify them from another competition, right?
No, not at all. Even with the same project that you've done, you can, as long as you don't win, you can reintroduce it, and with the same entry you can compete again and again and again. If another competition gives you a slightly better chance on winning compared to those competitors, then it's not like the usual film festival, film award ceremony where if you have it's not based completely on luck. So if you have the talent, but the problem is that all the other competitors are very talented, you have the chance to go for another and another and another.
Yes, and so is that all we have to say about our Near-Balkan? Lovely.
And we can go forward on to talking about, or actually continuing to talk about, the filmmaking and the artistic residency aspect of Manet France, and how we based the structure of our explanation and talking about experiences on the spine of making a movie, of developing from the point of inspiration, or even before that, a theme, to the actual finished movie. we split it into chapters, how we go through the process of finding inspiration, writing the story, prepping that, shooting the actual film, editing the film, and screening the film, and how we have experiences even with the screenings of them. And so in the first episode, which should already be out, we talked
primarily about our ways of finding inspiration and some writer's block, those kind of things.
Yes, and how the themes of, and we praise Laurent again, how the themes of Manet, of these projects, actually influence everything that happens there very much. And we talked about how we debate on these topics, and how every team, these are usually national teams we call them, but that only means that 5 to 8 people come from the same country.
And then they get to collaborate with everyone in the project.
Yes. Yeah, and so the question is, how we proceed, how do we go forward from the topic, the theme only, and how do we find that inspiration in the debates and stuff? So what do you think?
Well, from our shared experiences, we've managed to find some cultural taboos in each of our projects that we did with Laurent, where all the different people from different places all shared a hesitancy in some aspect of...
Yeah. The question... first to actually why would someone actually, we talked about this in the previous one, why do we produce art of all of this, because that's a prominent question in the project. There are people that are not artists, participants that are coming from completely different fields. Why do we need to produce art in the first place? What do you think?
Well, in a way, I think for the kind of project that Laurent has made, he always tries to orient the theme to be able to express some kind of political or economic message, which I think is quite a good reason to make art in the first place. You've got something to say that only words or paintbrush or a camera can depict.
I mean, yeah, that's one part of it. I think there is some... So for producing art in the first place, I think you have to have a message to tell, a story to tell, because art in itself is storytelling, even if it's not a storytelling form of art. So it's not writing a novel, or it's not drama, not theater, or not movies. It's still about telling a story. Fine art, painting, sculptures, all of that. It's finding a context and telling a story, a short story, a reflection of that context.
Feeling, maybe.
Yes, and so I think to differentiate only by approach, actually by consuming that art, I think there are at least two prominent ways of how art looks like. One, I think, is more of a signage, something that leads you to something that points at something, and something that is a content in itself. So, for example, in applied arts, I study graphic design, amongst many things, and so in graphic design, a sign you make, a logo you design, is usually referring to something that points at something, a brand, an identity or something. But so most of the time, for a logo, it's not enough to only point at something. It has to give the audience, the consumers, the people who get to know the brand, some insights.
What the brand?
No, not just the information of the brand, and that's the exact thing. A joke, some glimpse on a memory that you either acquire there or that you already have, and it points at something you already have to make you remember. And so that's I think where we can grasp art itself, is that it can give you an experience that is already a memory from that point on, and that can be referred to later on. And so in the case of a logo, we understand that if it's only a type, a font, and it's a typography that refers to the company by name, the brand, then you know that, if you have any experience with that brand, you connect it to that.
Logo.
But if, you have, if that logo is a joke, if that logo has some experience to give you by understanding it, by finding out. Michael Beer is a famous New York graphic designer, told this story that when he was 6 years old, and he's already like 60, so famous designer. He saw a logo in America for I'll tell on what, but it was Clark. So he when he was a child, it was a source of inspiration, base of motivation to become a graphic designer. That he saw a logo for Clark, a construction brand, that had the L of Clark, capital L, extend the bottom baseline of it for the A that's coming after L as well, as it's a forklift company, and it lifted the A in the word mark Clark. And so he refers to that joke, that little experience, as something where the applied art of graphic design actually produces something that we actually value art for in general. And that is the little experience, the story that refers to a context and tells a point of view in it. And so in the same way, photography, as I was taught in university, is a valuable form of art because it captures the point of view of those that have special point of views in the same places most of the time. If it's a landscape photography or city, urban photography, it captures the same places, the same objects, the same people even, same buildings, the same architectures that we go through, that we pass by every day, but from a special point of view. Yeah, a unique perspective, exactly. And so, going back to the original question, so when I asked you what finding inspiration is and the reason for producing art in these projects are, I think there is a huge misunderstanding, and I say misunderstanding, not just a difference in opinion, a misunderstanding on why and in what circumstances art should be produced. And for most of the people, they don't think art should be a story to tell to people. And I think it's a huge misunderstanding of how they teach art in at least this era of art education. Because most people think art is just for itself, just for the sake of art, and they only, create noise, most of them, because of this. Appreciating art is more like the consuming. Go ahead. And there's a point. So this kind of art is most of the time, if it's not about taste, is produced because the artist, the creator, is not focusing on actually telling a story. And we always come back to this vicious circle of filmmaking for the sake of filmmaking, the István Szabó quote. So in the sense, if a person doesn't understand that it's a perspective, a unique perspective given in a certain context, then we, and this is most of the time, and this is most people creating, artists, you are in noise, huge deafening noise of thought, of ideas, of a community of noise. And for me it's really disturbing, because this noise, in a sense, it's censoring you, and you wouldn't believe it if you haven't yet lived through it, but it is. Yeah, but even if stimulating, yes, come on, if you are stimulated by any sense, if you are inspired in the Lee Strasberg term of stimulation, then you have the motivation to tell that unique point of view, because that stimulus is something to talk about. If you have the urge suddenly to do something, to express that feeling of yours in music or through painting or through any medium of art, you have a reason to tell that. but for most people, most of the time, it's just I want to produce art, so I produce art. And that is the deafening noise I'm talking about. The ego. Yes. Yeah. And that's another aspect. Working with deadlines. For a certain deadline, of a certain event, producing something for those, that's another question, and that also has this effect. But I think a deadline and a task is something that helps you to concentrate. I would separate it from that, but you're right, this is what drives most people to deciding to produce it anyway without finding any inspiration. But I think it's only the approach. So if you are pressured so much and you're bored enough to say that we don't have the time to actually think about or actually find something to actually produce art about. If we don't have the time, we don't have the resources to tell a story, and we produce art anyway, then you are lazy enough to not produce art. I think deadline is something that I don't know, makes you blind for those, and you have to be aware that at that certain point you should not give in and say that we don't have more time or any resources, and still go on the deadly adventure, the energy consuming, the tiring, the sometimes even hurting experience of self-harming experience of pressuring you and your community to really not to create, to find that something to actually tell, I think. But well, I'm myself, and I'm not sure about you, I'm really curious on how you feel about these, because we've lived through some of these together. I am really mocked by taboos, by social boundaries, by boundaries that they say you cannot cross or otherwise. It fatigues me to think about these, that there are some boundaries that I should not I should not cross, and that they say that I'll be punished if I do so. I'm so deeply hurt by being told that these are there, that my art is mostly about telling these, about reporting on these. Like if these were only reports written and sent to a higher authority, and the higher authority in this sense is the audience, of the consuming audience. I wouldn't say so, and I tell you why. When I'm asked to do something and they convince me that it's for a principle or it's for a cause, then I conform. If people ask me, and mostly in these circumstances force me as a member of a community, or so in this case force everyone else as well, but I can't stand it. So that's why if they force me, if they ask me to conform to something that they can't explain why I should conform to, or they can explain, but in the end I find that it's a false explanation because it's mostly about identity, and already a conforming identity to some ideology or some false belief, then I can't help myself but to not conform and to critique, to make a satire on their approach to that false belief or identity politics. And I think exactly that, and I can really only respect, and in that sense I'm a conservative, but I hope only in that sense. I can only think of artists, think of people as artists, if they use it to point out the flaws of communities, of society altogether, or in subculture, a smaller sense. And if they don't, if they're lazy enough not to do it, I don't consider them artists anymore. And simply that. And really, if you produce music because you're inspired in some way, that is still reflecting on society, that is still reflecting on a point of view the artist has in a context, and in that sense it's sincere. So I'm not saying that it's only mocking people. No, it's reporting on the state of living. And if an artist doesn't do that and doesn't care to do that, I think they just misunderstand the job. So let's talk about taboos. When I said I get deeply disturbed by the things they ask me to conform to, but they can't really explain why they really want or need that. And well, I find this self-censoring, and I say identity politics because they force these self-censoring ideas onto others. And the most common, and this is, I think it's even more common to social dynamic, that if I feel that something shouldn't be done by me because it would hurt someone else. No, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead and elaborate. I'm not sure I understand. I understand, but I think the origin of this is the expectation of principle from others. And so what self-correction and the correction of others, so implying and forcing your ideals onto others and your way of being onto others. And I'm saying, I said I'm a conservative because I only regard certain people as artists, certain creators as artists. I'm not forcing or implying that on others. I'm not, well, I won't regard them as artists, but I'm not saying that they should do as I say. But the disturbing part is that most people, when they fear something, and this is not a fear of mine, what I said about artists, and so I think fear is much larger, heavier pressure, source of pressure. If people fear something and they conform to that fear and they give in to that fear, they force it upon the community that they are in. So others shouldn't do it either. They should not think, talk and reflect on that fear either, because you have a trauma and you don't want to face it. And you don't want others to bring it up, so you have to face it. I'm not sure if I... yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I find that these taboos are made because, or as a linear product of lack of consciousness and the lack of direction from people. And really this is my clashing point with the negative term of wokeism or political correctness or whatnot. Our generation was born and raised in the golden age of neoliberalism, and we were taught the rules of neoliberalism. This was something to follow, And we're still, I'm coming out of that age, but we're still thinking of the rules of neoliberalism as the rules of life, kind of. So this ideology is inherent to us, to our lives. But, yes. And yet, wokeism I regard it as the dogmatic prioritization of minorities and excluded previously suppressed minorities, or still suppressed minorities, but the creation. So woke has this attribute of creating social bubbles, of lifting up previously suppressed minorities to lead out of certain, not democracy, meritocracy, not based on talent or skill or knowledge or experience, but on identity. So it's a certain kind of meritocracy that rewards identity. And so it's not democratic in any way. It's, as I said, meritocratic, because when we talk about equality and when we talk about the individual freedom, we disregard that, and it's secondary to these lifted minorities in their meritocratic state leading and deciding for the people that are in the community, for the rest of them. So we are correcting ourselves for the well-being, the made-up well-being of these identity groups. No, and I didn't say that. It's a third person, yeah. And yeah, so going back to why we produce art and how we produce art, when we meet these circumstances, well, these taboos in an Orwellian fashion, as injustices, they should be documented, they should be reported upon for readers, for art consumers of the future. Because these are states of our current generation, the state of living of ideologies and all that for our current generation. So, for example, disclaimer, we're not critiquing wokeism and political correctness from the right. We're critiquing it from the left, or at least I am for sure. I am not a liberal, I don't regard myself as a liberal, even though some do. I regard myself more as a leftist, let that be a social democrat or even a socialist. I'm not that politically developed to tell, but I'm surely more to the left than the average liberal. And so when I say that the problem with prioritizing and putting in these meritocratic leading positions these minorities, or at least bubbles, if they themselves don't even lead, so giving them useless decisions and setting up useless boundaries for the other members of the community, this I'm not saying it's bad because minorities shouldn't be treated better and the suppression shouldn't be eliminated. I'm saying this because the individual and collective freedom is suppressed, and that is a problem, and that is a critique I have for wokeism, and I will not stop pointing these errors out, even though if I'm kicked out of one community after another, and I really am getting cancelled every half year, but I think it is a huge problem, and this causes social anxiety that we don't even dare to tell or to admit to ourselves that we have this social anxiety, and lots of stress comes from us not admitting to others, to ourselves, that we are forced to conform to certain rules that are not even explained to us, that we don't even or wouldn't necessarily agree to, and still we conform to those because there are certain consequences that we fear would happen otherwise. And yeah. And so, when in these youth exchange / artistic residencies, we have 3 weeks usually, as to point out, to make it obvious what the deadline is. 3 weeks to produce a show, a series of shows, what we call a final performance, where again a Gesamtkunstwerk of every type of art that was produced and can be produced, really anything you can do there, during the 3 weeks by the 40 to 60 participants from all around the world, mostly from Europe, produce. Those have to have an end result that is presented, that is projected, if it's a movie, to the villagers, the French villagers that live there. And so, yeah, in that sense, there's also a misunderstanding, I think, from the participants there, that what we produce is only for those people. No, not at all. And they are not even the primary audience. We are the primary audience, and those are the primary audience that are interested in our art and in our opinions of the world, and who we will show the movies that we produced to. And I think this misunderstanding also causes partially that laziness, or if it's interchanging, the laziness causes these compromises, that we think that we only produce something for a conservative, mostly politically conservative, 60 community of pensioners that live in that village, and our creations are shown to. Yeah. And what do you think? So when we talk about these taboos, it may be a fixation of mine. I'm asking your opinion on that. But finding the traumas, finding the reasons behind these taboos is, I think, the most interesting processes there are for finding sources of inspiration for the art itself. You've been part of some of these processes of finding the traumas, analyzing the traumas of people, of communities and stuff. Do you think I think it's the most important thing to do, to find these, to analyze these, to analyze the structures and to rebuild these, to mimic these. But what do you think? Is this important at all, and how is it for you? Yeah, I understand. Okay, so let's talk about the perfect controversy, what we call the perfect controversy, which is, after finding that source of inspiration, the trauma in a community, we find ourselves in a vicious position, which is that for the writer, the most sincere position to tell a story is, and to inspiration to use for your story is to talk about the deeper stories, is to talk about the exact environment that they are in, to talk about the exact people that the writer is surrounded by, and to talk about the exact social dynamics that these people have with the writer themselves. So it's mostly, as in some Woody Allen satires or comedies it is made fun of, people gradually realizing that the writer is mimicking and mocking them and mimicking the actually happened real debates and conflicts and stuff that happen around the writer. And this is, if anything, a source of huge conflicts in the direct environment of the writer and these stories produced. Yeah. Well, explanation is too rational in these circumstances. It's actually, I think, all about intuition, and from their part, and from mine, and from the artist, from the muse. So it's really hard to that point when the conflict arises and well, you can't really, you have to explain yourself, or people don't even ask you to, but they just blame you. There would be no point of rationally, logically explain and map what happened and why, and so at that point it's only about feelings, only about the state of a community, and yeah, I think it's a natural part of the process, and you can't really evade it. If a community is, I think, psychologically independent and is wise enough, they recognize that this critique is something to build upon and to use. And if they're not, well, they find it as a critique that cannot be taken without revenge or without any countermeasures. But let's grasp this, what these stories that the writer or writers find around themselves about. Why is this so important, and how do we use that inspiration of the story, of these taboos, of these traumas in a story? And so when we do that, we host a brainstorming session of sorts. That is really the most fun I had in these kind of projects and these processes, and the most fun I had in the previous years in my entire life, because these are so pressure cookers, of course, but these are reliefs for us from all the anxiety that we've had because of these taboos until that point, because we couldn't name them. And on these brainstorming sessions, when we map out the conflicts, the taboos, the traumas, the dynamics on who lies to who, on what the reason for a certain person could be, should be, to do what they do, and to connect to other people, and to shape their connections to other people the way they do. And when we find out the combination and the reasons, we can name in this way, in its complexity, the taboos, the traumas, the pressures that were there, and it's such a relief to do that, and also to find something to produce art about at the same time. These happen all at once. It's just fun. What do you think? And conspire, yeah, that's nice way to put it, because when we are doing that, the brainstormings, it's usually a long process. I mean, it takes hours, even sometimes days, and it's a community space, it's a community project. There are sometimes 60 or even 70 people living around the same buildings, doing their own means of art, producing their own means of art, and doing their own sub-projects, workshops, and all of those. And, well, everyone, sometimes, half of the people every time is just having fun and just resting or playing around. But the point is, we can't really evade bumping into people, or we can't really evade, if we're stationary, people bumping into us. And so we have to brainstorm while the subjects, most of the time, are around the brainstorming about them. And, we've we've had some troubles, and I mean, this year, this August, and the project that we've been on, I usually am cancelled in every environment, but this time I was really cancelled. So when people found out, and I basically mocked the wife of our head organizer, the founder, Laurent, and even Laurent himself, and best friend of Laurent. So I really went for it. But the point is, for the big one, yeah. But I didn't. I mean, they, I think, still are searching for the reason why. Why do I want to challenge them? And no, in no way. I didn't want to challenge them. I am always mocking these taboos, and these frustrations, these taboos, were produced by them in this case, and they were distressed, and they were forcing these, their understandings of what to do and what not to do on the community. And so, naturally, they became the subject of satire, of critique. But they couldn't handle it, of course, because of partially my position as the young one who takes on all possible organizing tasks in the project, and I seem like a contender in their positions of owner, founder, organizer, I don't know, which I am not, but as I started also to critique them in the art part, they I think found me as someone who treats himself as a challenger, as a competitor for the position of, owner, founder, head organizer. No, I mean, they told this to me, and people were talking about this even when we were there. So it was the obvious rational understanding of what has been going on. But the point is, we can't and we won't ever be able to solve this mystery, I think. Just getting closer and closer, understandings of it, but never solving it. I think this is the kind of feeling that anyone goes through that is being critiqued. It's not the Dunning-Kruger. What is the other one? The curve. Dunning-Kruger is the kind of learning. There was the other one. That was the 5, or I don't know how many stages of grief, and there was also 7 stages of grief. There was also a guy and a woman with not Dunning, but never mind. The point is that it's basically that. So if someone is critiqued, someone is mocked by a satire, by a story that's told about the taboos and the traumas. Traumas that the writer thinks that the trauma is. They go through inevitably these 7 stages, or wherever they get to in these, of grief. And so I think what we saw this year was that the organizer, the head organizer, the wife, the best friend and whatnot, they went through these stages and they implied their feelings on the entire project with it. And so if, in any other case, someone else who I previously mocked, or who I will mock in the future, would be the organizer, the head organizer, they would also imply it on the entire project. So I think it's not because of Laurent and them, not because of their abilities, skills and attributes. It's because if someone is mocked, they go through these stages. It's just the speed and the distance that they get to in these phases that, yeah, go ahead. No, it's fine. So the point is, I think if someone advances faster, the consequences are smaller. If someone advances slower on the stages of grief, the consequences are larger and longer, and, well, they had many other sources of pressure, so I wouldn't blame them on this. And I wouldn't blame myself as, those exact circumstances wanted me to stop with what I'm doing, and even others who I previously critiqued wanted to cancel my previous work, and they wanted me to stop doing these subversions of reality. But no, I won't, and I think it's the most legit thing an artist can do. So I'm not going to excuse myself or apologize just because I critiqued taboos and social pressures. But it happened the way it happened. But we describe what happens when you brainstorm in front of those that even if you use covert measures and if you use code names for them and stuff, you can't really escape them learning about what you do. And so how about the perversion of over-analyzing and finding better and better combinations? This is our next cue card. Yeah, and so it's really difficult, even though we said in these brainstormings there's such a relief that we finally found inspiration and that we could also release these tensions that we've had until that point. But the story itself is not there until it's written. And when you write down these experiences, you write down the characters. When you are writing the drafts, the first drafts, I mean not the first draft of a script, but just ideas, outlines, you use if you use this way of writing, you use the exact same sentences. You try to find the exact same sentences that these characters use to find out about their motivation. And so we use a system of 4 aspects to define characters, taken from Sitfield, one of the Bible writers of screenwriting, the profession of screenwriting, which is drama, worldview on a longer term, and need and want on a shortened term, so the exact length of a story, timeline of a story, what defines the understandings, the motivations, and the characterization of our characters. So the drama has a direct consequence, which is the worldview. So we define something that happens to the character, and the taboo is the worldview. So basically, these two we already define what they are. A taboo, a social taboo that they set because they fear something most of the time, or they want to achieve something. They imply it, they enforce it onto others, and that becomes their worldview. How they are enforcing them, how they talk about it, and the idea. And so the need and the want is something concrete, something that happens to these characters in the timeline of the story. So in the actual encounters the writer had with them, or the writer, taken from other situations that they seen. So in these situations, the character has to have short-term wants, something to achieve, something that they want to get, to acquire, they want other people to do. The point is, want has to be something active, not passive, active. So it already shrinks down the possibilities. It already gives you a certain premier selection of what you can do, because this is something that they talk about. This is something that they usually explicitly say they want to do, otherwise it would be passive. And so the need, and this is the fun part, is usually the exact opposite of the want. So a character in a cognitive dissonance, which is the most interesting and exciting thing for an audience, a viewer, to see on the screen in a drama and in a film alike, is the characters acting as hypocrites, because they are in a state of constant cognitive dissonance over some want that they want to explicitly do and rationally do, but the implicit, the more intuition-based need, a skill, mostly it's a lack of a skill and a lack of psychological experience, or lack of this is exactly the need. Something against, something undermining their want, or if you think of it in depth, it's the want that is undermining the need, and the want that is not admitting that there is that need, the lack of something. And and even there was analysis of this, I think, on Studio Binder, this huge platform for screenwriting and independent productions, and they have a YouTube channel that made them actually even more famous, the marketing device that they have, that they do analysis of some film production and film analysis aspects, and make it understandable for the average viewer. And so they had a really dumbed down explanation on how, I'm not sure if those were the Sitfieldian, but when the need and the want met by the finale of the story, whether both are, whether neither are, whether one or the other are met as a resolution. And I'm not sure what they picked, but I think there was the Rain Man, the Godfather, and I don't remember the rest. But in Godfather, I think it was both are lost. Need is lost and the want is lost. Because the want was, good. Well, it was a corruption arc. Godfather, all three are corruption arcs because the character Michael Corleone wants to the need is to be independent from the mob crimes that his father and the mafia family does, and his want is to protect his family and his family legacy. And so when the father is shot, and so he has to enter the family because also his brother is killed. Huge spoilers in the 1971 movie. So he has to give up, as he describes then, temporarily on the need he has to stay independent from this. And so he becomes the leader, temporary leader of the mob. But when the father dies, he has to remain permanent in that position, so the need eventually goes away. It stays unresolved. He's not becoming just a war veteran and I think, I'm not sure he wants to go to become a politician at the beginning, I'm not sure. The point is, protection of his family, that's not exactly working out, because he undermines his own family and he leaves his girlfriend for another wife he has in Sicily who's killed. So he goes back to that girlfriend and marries her. And I'm not trying to spoil the second one, but he even participates or orders the killing of some of his own family members. So he eventually is pretty much corrupted to a point that he didn't protect his family and he didn't stay away from the mob. So that's when a need and a want is not met either. So the connection to be examined here is that the need is to stay away and the want is to protect. To protect, you have to be there. So want is the superficial thing, something that is on the surface, and the need is something deeply unconscious. So when in the subconscious, I'm sorry. And so when the character makes a decision, and it's kind of parallel or analogy can be made to how an artist produces art and how a director directs the film and makes decisions. So when the character makes decisions, there is the job, and I'm gonna interchangeably talk about the director and the character, the job to produce the movie and to execute the script that they have. For the character, with their mission, it's the same. But the decisions that the character makes are not those, in the sense of a director, that are necessarily given by the script, because the decisions are mostly not given by the script. A story that can be told to any extent that the director is capable of directing it. It's just a story, a pure story. The best scripts are just pure stories, sometimes even pure dialogue and nothing else. And if you understand the story, you, by the extent of your skills and experiences and capacities and budget, you can tell it. Creativity. But your decisions are made through your subconscious, through your experiences, through your understanding and acceptance of how the work, how the art is. And the character will only pivot from their wants if their need is pointing elsewhere. And so in this sense, staying away from the family it can be the actual want, and protecting the family legacy can be the actual need. And these can go interchangeably. A want and a need, usually halfway through writing, are trading places. But you have to decide on which is which is the actual inner motivation of a character and which is the hypocritical opposite that they're saying. In the case of Corleone, obviously the need is more complex than just staying away from all that trouble. Is is actually doing it better, I think. Staying away is staying legal. And staying legal compared to illegal, remaining legal, is better. So he just wants to, as a next generation, do it better than the previous generation has done so. And so the inner motivation and the inner need thus is doing it better. So when he decides to give up staying independent, he doesn't give up his inner need because he thinks it's his chance to do it better. And protecting the family legacy is something, he says, protecting the family, but what he actually wants is protecting the family legacy. He doesn't meet their goal, his want, protecting the family, because he eventually kills some of the family members and he drives the family into war. But he protects the family legacy because this becomes the greatest mafia that there is in America in the story, and protects the family legacy, even creates an even bigger and larger and more important legacy than there was, and he does it better. So I'd say it's not a full arc, because it's not just not meeting the want and the need, it's a corruption arc, changing and adapting, or actually admitting that these wants and these needs were actually corrupt from the beginning, and they were just, self-deceiving and comforting for the character to say that they are just, but they weren't. So yeah. So trauma, what do you need and want? After each brainstorming we get to these, and before any single word written down in the format of a script, of a screenplay, we struggle through many different combinations, variations, character, trauma as well, use needs and wants, and the combinations and the storylines and the plot lines and stuff. And after we've done enough and we're satisfied sort of with one way, then comes the most impossible chapter of putting these words down, the infinite days of not sleeping, only 1 or 2 hours, and just typing, drafts and drafts and drafts of a screenplay, scrapping them, rewriting them, adjusting them, going back to previous drafts, scrapped drafts, developing them, enhancing them, and putting a story together. But that's for the next part, the next episode. Let's hope others like our podcast as well, and we continue anyway, because we're not doing it for the money, because there ain't any. Then there is a chance you'll see a link in the description. You can support us, and the biggest support that you as a viewer could do is to hop on the platform of Near-Balkan, look for possibilities to upload movies, share your movie ideas, and to buy premiere tickets ahead for the competition, choosing who are you rooting for, which movie draft are you a fan of, and wait till the end of the competition. And enhance our way of talking about these things based on your insights and remarks. Okay, see you next time. Bye.